Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. I don't know what my chemistry teacher would have said about me. Probably wasn't very flattering. In fact, Bert Seath thought it was he, whenever an experiment was taking place in the lab, used to leave the room, stand just outside the door and peer inside. So afraid was he of the potential results of his students. And I think that was entirely attributable to the students, not to any deficiencies in his teaching. Poor Bert had previously been blown up in an experiment and didn't want to repeat that once again. I think Ian Gray, too, touched on something very important in relation to science, that it does not stand alone when we talk of subjects like this from moral and social issues. And I think he was entirely right to talk about the conditions that we are depending on for much of our technology in countries such as Congo and elsewhere. Lithium, too, I think, is something that is extracted in quite appalling conditions, and which electric cars are going to depend on unless we change the technology. Now, this has been an excellent opportunity, perhaps for my two interns, who this morning I asked to prepare some speaking notes for today. They are both interns with limited scientific knowledge, and it's always quite interesting how much they can discover in a short space of time. So I, like others, will thank Ian Gray for providing the opportunity to discuss the periodic table. It's one of these visual things that sticks in your memory from your education, even if the detail escapes you. The shape is something that will stick with you. It's a rich tool for teaching and remembering what it means. It is, of course, to me as a mathematician, a very humble and poor mathematician, I hasten to add, one of the great things in chemistry, because it has a symmetry and a pattern which lends itself to mathematicians in particular. My interns, Claire and Anna, identified Sir William Ramsay as well and found that he was described as one of the greatest chemical discoverers of the time. And I've always thought it was a particularly notable achievement for someone back in 1894 to discover a chemically inert gas, because how do you detect it when it doesn't interact with anything else? And they tell me that when he named it argon, he did so because that is the Greek name for lazy, because as a gas, it did not have any chemical properties that were particularly notable. But of course, having discovered one noble gas, he then went on to discover another three, and that was absolutely excellent. And that's an example of Scotland being a leader in scientific discovery. But of course, Ian Gray correctly identified that that didn't happen out of nowhere. It happened because we had a well-educated population who took an interest in philosophical and scientific matters. We are only about 500 metres from the memorial to David Hume's in the old Colton Cemetery at the top of the hill next to the government building. In fact, celebrating one part of our achievement. We have, at the end of George Street, we have Maxwell. There's a new statue to him. So we celebrate our achievements, but we must have a new bank of highly skilled STEM literate employees. And it must be men and women. If we fail to engage the females of our race, then we miss out on 50% of that terrific intellect that there is there. The periodic table gives us a universal language to talk about elements and molecules, helps us to catalyze and synthesize scientific knowledge and excellence, and of course is something that is used around the world. It's something that promotes joint progress because we have a shared model, and collaboration is always going to be something that's of value in science. I very much welcome the opportunity to recognise the momentous contribution of the periodic table, acknowledge the importance of its continuing in scientific development and education, I must say, in the science wing of the school that I attended, my favourite thing was always the Van de Graaff generator, which you could charge yourself up to 1 million volts and then go and discharge on other people to their great shock and alarm. But I do remember the periodic table. It is immensely valuable to us and will be to others. Presiding Officer.